Hey yo, it's your boy Kaliko here. So far we have taken this stone from being a very rough looking piece of agate and we have taken it to a pre-polished stage. Although that's not what you see right here, this is the final stage that we are going to finish taking it to in this episode right now. Well, so far it's turning out to be a great stone. It's got great color all over in it. Yellows and oranges and greens. Those are the mainstay colors going on, and it has a couple of areas I'm still not quite happy with. There's this one little dead spot with the white ring right there that I thought was going to be a C, but during polishing it's not really a C. So I'm going to leave that right there. I'm going to try and curve out some more of this with the 280 Nova point. I'm going to try and remove that little area white with the 280 Nova point and finish getting the little bits of rippling that was in this surface right here out. See if I can expose a little bit more green in this area right here and hopefully reduce the slice right there. I'm not going to worry about the little bits of white agate in the color on top here. I'm going to hope that that comes out when I am moving up in my Nova Point polishes. And I'm also going to see if that 280 Nova Point will reduce some of this orange and yellow agate right here and maybe get it to where it is more of the green that's underneath of it. If not, it'll be fine. But that's what I need to do immediately before I move up to a 600 from this 280. And once again, once I get the stone wet, you can really see that once it has a gloss on it, I mean, it's got a lot going on for it. I actually think one of the first areas I'm going to start on is the area try
I
and
can't
make
even
sure
see
that
it
I
once it's
stay
wet,
within
when
the
I
bars
dry
of
it,
color
I
and the
can.
way
It
that
just
they
has that little
naturally
white
are.
speck of agate right there in the corner, and then it has that line. But that line of white agate is usually a layer of white and clear agate that's just really thin running through the stone, through the agate, because it's all
The use
agate.
of Nova Points is relatively simple. You want water or some type of lubrication, and you want a fair amount of it to preserve the burr so that it doesn't end up burning out and wearing down prematurely. This 280 grit I'm using here can wear away enough stone and change the shape of the stone that I definitely want to pay attention to how I'm using my motions with the burr.
Oops. Caught that on the sharp edge and just immediately starts eating away at the burr really fast. You want to be conscious of creating edges and then running your burr along them. Just eats into it, wears it away really quick by cutting it instead of it cutting the stone.
I tend to use my Nova points to draw with. If you can see, I like to run it around the creases and the crevices and try and basically draw the way that I think the stone is supposed to be there, especially with the 280 grit.
See what that white spot looks like. It's definitely smaller. That edge already looks a little bit better also. The 280 grit definitely does some cutting, but it's cutting at a slow enough rate that, yeah, there's more of the white. Now the water's dried up a little bit. I guess I was missing this spot right here and that spot here. I mean, it is white agate. Just for some reason, I really don't like it. I don't like seeing it right there. It bothers me a little bit for some reason.
Now this 280 Nova Point is really good at removing tool marks from the metal burrs that I was using previously, and a lot of times I use the shank of the Nova Point and circular motions in order to try and remove some of those tool marks and make the stone a little bit more rounded and more flowing, like the water tends to flow over it and the light will tend to flow over it. And that's really what this 280 grit is really great for, is removing those tool marks and getting the shape just right before you just go and polish with the other preceding grits. Now at any point when you think that this stage is finished, you're going to want to dry your stone and inspect it very thoroughly. You're going to want to check and make sure that the whole stone looks the way you want it to, moving from the 280 onto the 600. On each stage, if you do it really well, if you do your 280 really well, your 600 polish will take really quickly, and if you do your 600 really well, your 1200 polish will take really quickly, and so on and so forth. Alright, I'm going to wash the stone real quick, and then I'm also going to get a fresh towel. I don't want to use this towel that I've been using with the other grits to dry the stone and check it in between my polishes. I want to have a different towel for each polish because I don't want to put a 600 grit in a 1200 finish. But I think this is ready to be moved on. It's not perfect, but I don't carve perfectly yet. I'm still a novice at this. But I've definitely learned a bunch of stuff, and that the best way to get better is to get in there and start doing and learn from your mistakes. One of the other things I've learned about fire agate is that not all fire agate is created equal like most gemstones, and that different localities and different holes from the same locality, and heck, just one piece of fire agate to another, the thickness in the colors will definitely vary, the types of colors will definitely vary, and the layers, and if the color is multicolor in a single layer, will definitely vary. Fire agate can be like a snowflake. Each one can be supremely different from the next, and you can find that out when you're carving it and when you're digging it, that's for sure. With the Nova points, we want to definitely just start at one edge of the stone. So we're starting on this edge of the stone, and we're going to work our way across the whole stone, spot by spot, putting some light pressure on the Nova point and on the stone, not enough to where it cuts in or gouges, and we want to be moving in those same sort of circles. And we want to make sure we get over every stretch and every nook and cranny and crease that we possibly can. Now there will end up being some spots that we can't get with the shape that the Nova point is, but we'll deal with that in a little while with some Nova discs and with the final polish. Now what I'm doing there is I'm actually using the underside of the burr to catch some of these ledge half rounded areas I have with some of this orange coming off of them, to see if I can polish them down to the green. This burr is almost done being used, number one, so I'm not really worried about damaging it too much, and I'm being extremely careful, which if you're going to do this, you want to be extremely careful because you don't want to hit the spindle, either part of the spindle or the shaft, because it's going to end up damaging your stone. That would be bad. So you want to be extremely careful with what you're doing. I'm using the edge and I'm just going over these little areas. Not quite as hazy as it was before, but it's still got some spots on top with a little bit of white agate in it right here in the creases. Now, before you move on from one nova point to another in grit size, I recommend that you dry your stone and then you let it sit for about 5 minutes so that it's completely dry and there's no moisture left on it at all. And then you can go and look over it and see if you see any areas that really need to be gone over again because they didn't pick up the polish from the 600. There's a couple of spots on this I can see, like in the crevice right here. That's definitely still has a 280 polish. That's definitely not a 600 yet. Right here, coming over this little hump right here, that's definitely still a 280 polish. That's not a 600 yet. But that also might be because of the burr I'm using, the size of the head. Yeah, I have to use the exact point to get in there. And I'm a little bit hesitant to use the point of this because I'm really close to being where the shank of it is going to be coming through, and then I can scratch the stone. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to take this and put this 600 nova point on, which is the only small nova point I have. Yet, unfortunately, it's a manufacturer's defect, and it creates a whole bunch of vibration. I need to send this one back to the store, but I need to use it before I do that. And you can't tell when you see it spin. Oh, you see it, and when it's, watch it when it stops spinning. You see that wobble? That wobble's really bad when you're working on a stone. It throws a whole bunch of vibration into the stone. So we're going to avoid that. We're just going to use the tip of it. And we're not going to use too much pressure, because that pressure will really make it. I don't want the vibration to make the stone pop off of the dop. And I want to get into these little nook areas that didn't quite take the 600 polish. The whole stone's vibrating so bad I'm having a problem watching it. Just looking at the stone's like starting to make my eyes hurt because it's vibrating so much. And actually on screen it doesn't look like you can see it that much because it takes so much light to get a good camera shot that I think all you guys are really seeing is the reflection of the fire coming out of the stone. Once you get to the 600 nova point too, you don't have to worry about losing the color as much as you can worry about just fine detailing and trying to make sure that the color's like seeable from all angles. It's gonna be a fantastic stone. I need to get this section of the grinding done because the vibration is just really bad. Dry this off real quick and we'll let this sit for about 10 minutes. And then we'll actually, you know what? I can already see right here in this line. I don't quite think that line is good enough yet still. Possible it's just the angle, but I think that I don't quite have the 280 out of there. Gonna give it a good wash real quick. Dry it off. Let it sit for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and check and make sure that it's ready for the 1200 stage. Alright, we've done our 600 polish on it. It's been rinsed and dried. And now this is our 600 Nova Point polish. I would say that the 600 took. I would also say there's a huge stone. Yes, it is. So we're going to be moving on to a 1200 Nova Point. This is a gray color. Once again, we want to have a new towel, new rag. I just happen to be using towels torn into rags, or big towels that need to be torn into rags. But you want to have a new rag, new towel. And then you want to pick a side of the stone, which we've been starting with this side over here, so I don't see why we shouldn't just go ahead and start with it too. Now if you've done a good job with the 600, then it doesn't take as long with the 1200, and so on and so forth. So if with each one of those Nova points you make sure that you do a proper job, then progressively the stone, each Nova point takes less time to use on the stone. Let me say that broken up as much as possible. Not quite ready. Almost, but not quite. A couple of spots that are not quite a good enough 1200. This very top area had a little bit of that white agate left in this orange that I'm going at right now. And hopefully that'll be enough with the 1200, and we'll move on to the 3000 before we go with a final polish. I'm going to rinse it and dry it and let it sit for about 10 minutes and then inspect it. And then we'll see what we're doing. Alright, it's totally dry, and we can see the finish that it has going on. Can even zoom a little bit more. Now I can really see what's going on with the stone. See that it has orange and green and bronze and yellow playing at pretty much all angles. There's a couple of imperfections inside this orange line right here. It's just some white agate right on top of the color. It's so on top of the color that getting rid of the white, the color starts to go away too. So for this first cutting of this stone, I can see in some of the creases it looks like it could use a little bit more of the 1200 possibly. So I might run the 1200 over it again. But if you're working on your first stone that you're cutting, there is no problem with finishing a stone out that looks just like this. It's got plenty of color in it. Overall, it looks great. Right now, as far as this stone goes, I'm proud of the way it looks. Great looking stone. I'm going to go over it a little bit more with this 1200. Oh, screwing up the camera. Wasn't on purpose. Yep, still not quite ready right in that one little crease right there. It just doesn't have the right reflection. It's just missing the proper reflection. It's the only area, and then I think this is ready to go to a 3000. Looks about ready to go to the 3000 to me. I'm gonna give it a good rinse and then swap out my rag for another rag. All right. We want to get as close to a near finish on this as we can. We're going to start on the same side that we've started all 3 times before, or all the other times before I should say, which is this corner right here. And I'm going to blame that on the vibration of the last burr I had. I'm really going to blame that this popping off of it is that's fault, because it's not even as cold out here as it was this morning. It's pretty cold this morning. And also, I probably should have only did this down to a 600. After 600, I probably should have stopped and dopped it then. Yet we still got a great stone. I can finish this out by hand. It's big enough. It's not going to be a problem. Sure is a lot easier to hold with that stick on it. But I can finish this stone out without the stick. Whoa. Caught an edge right there. You can see the spiral of the Nova point that got cut off. Want to be careful about that. I have a couple of edges on this stone, but you want to be definitely aware and not trying to ruin your Nova point or wearing it down way more than it needs to be. Right about at the 3000 stage, the stone starts to get slick to the touch, especially when it's wet. Starts to have that slippery, hard to hold on to feel. Stone's looking really good, but before I move on to the final polish, I want to check everything. And what I noticed while I was checking everything is I was noticing that this edge is not near ready. This edge over here on this side and then running along that edge is not near ready. The rest of it's pretty much ready to go. But I have a section over here that needs to be finished. So I'm going to go ahead and get this edge with this 3000. So it can be glossy like the rest of the stone. Only take me a couple of minutes. It's a section that doesn't even matter. It's never going to be seen once it's made into jewelry. Actually, it might. Somebody decides to just like hang the stone the way it is. That's what we got with no water on it. I just had water hit my fingers. That one section's still not quite as nice as the rest of it. It's probably because it didn't get hit with a 12 either, though. Probably what's going on. So here we go. This is totally dry. This is with a 3000 polish. And I am going to hit it with some DIASHINE Superfine now. And this will be done. Here I've got some DIASHINE Superfine Soft. And you just go ahead and put a drop of water on it, which I'm going to do now. Just a drop of water. Now I'm just going to let that sit on there. I have my DIASHINE embedded on a hog bristle brush. I think it's hog bristle, could be anything else. Now you don't want to use too much pressure like I just did right there, because then the brush will just rotate around. It'll grab onto the stone and almost pull it around the stone. So you want to avoid doing that if at all possible. And the first thing I do is I coat the stone. Once again, like I said, you go really light. Because you don't need much pressure. See, when I go and put a little bit too much pressure, the brush grabs the stone and rotates around it pretty much. There, now that I've got the stone coated on the side I'm polishing, I just go ahead and lightly go over areas again and again. I'm not trying to use any pressure really, I'm just trying to make sure that the brushes are actually making contact. And the diamond paste from DIASHINE, it really does its work and it really lasts a very, very long time. Just want to make sure that you get the brushes and the brushes are getting in all the cracks and the crevices. I'm pumping my wheel on and off, on and off. I tend to do that with most of the grinding that I do. At the same time, my hand's starting to get wet, I'm getting hit by the drip. At the same time, with the DIASHINE paste, you definitely want to do that as much as possible. If you can, you don't want to keep the wheel just spinning at a high rate. One, you fling some of the powder off as it dries. And then number two, this powder has a really high friction rate. It does an amazing job, yet because it has such a high friction rate, it also builds heat really, really fast. So if you're just going to town, whop, your stone will get so hot that it'll melt the dop wax right off of the dop. Your stone will just slide right off of the dop wax. So you want to avoid that. And a way to avoid that is to not have your wheel going full bore. If you can keep it from going full bore. If you have one of those machines that you don't have a foot pedal with it and you just have to do what you can do, then you have to. Make it work for you. I'm going to show you my other technique here in a minute to finish this off, to really sort of punch the finish that we get home. So again, you want to really pay attention to your cracks and your crevices. You don't want to waste the DIASHINE if at all possible. The paste is rather expensive, but in the scheme of how long it works and how many times it does for what you get, it's really inexpensive. It really, really is. It lasts a really long time if you use it right. Really wish I would have been able to keep this on the DOP stick. It'd be a lot easier to do what I'm doing here right now if it was on a DOP. And I can see the finish that the DIASHINE has on the stone is much more satiny. You can almost see the stone and the DIASHINE starting to glow. Don't want to drop it. If I drop it, it falls into the water trough that I've been grinding in the wastewater, which means the whole stone has to be cleaned, and then I have to put more DIASHINE on it and start all over. And I really want to avoid that, if at all possible, in any way, shape, or form. I do not want that to happen at all. Whoops, putting a little bit too much pressure. The bristles are grabbing the stone too much and starting to rotate around it. But the DIASHINE in the brush is definitely doing its job. I think we're getting close. We're almost there. It's almost ready for its final stage. So let's go ahead and hit the back real quick. Get a little bit of DIASHINE polish on the back side. Make sure I get those edges. All right, set that down. Take my wheel off. Now, if you're going to be working like I was just working, or like I'm working at the moment, you want to go back to your DIASHINE, which is probably nice and wet now, and get a little bit on the edges. Now, if you get it on the edges, you want to spread it around sort of on the top. See how you're seeing it go in, and then I do the same thing on the bottom. You can see it sort of graying a little bit more. And then I rinse my hand off, because a little bit of this stuff goes a really long way, as you can see below me. And then I go ahead and cap my DIASHINE and put that away. And then I take this and I set this in its bag. It's where the bag is open and it dries out. And that's what I do with that. That's the brush, and that way the bristles are nice and coated for next time I want to use it. Alright, so here on this mandrel I have a hard felt disc. Once again, you shouldn't be breathing in the dust or the felt.
You don't want to be breathing in the diamond dust. So when you're working dry with stuff like this, you really want to have your respirator on. An area that possibly, I don't know what's going on with these felt wheels, but whoops, not working for me the way I want them to at the moment. So of all the areas I was able to use that felt wheel on, I wasn't quite able to use it inside that crevice right there, but you can see the finish is just stellar. So this is the way I like to use my DIASHINE. I'll go ahead and finish the back. Alright, here it is, totally dry. Finish being polished. I've got all kinds of noise going on around me, not trying to help me shoot this video finish. So now that I got a picture, you can go ahead and make it a little bit tighter, zoom in a little bit. Now we have a general picture of what the finished stone looks like. I can go ahead and edit this video and send the camera off to get repaired. Hopefully it won't be gone very long. I really need this camera. It's Christmas time. It's a great looking stone though, isn't it? A special congratulations to Mark Schmidtke. He is our special winner of the New Year's Fire Agate Rock Box Lotto raffle. Once again, congratulations for winning the awesome stone that's been in this video series. Check in the description for information on how to acquire any of the products used inside of this video if you'd like to purchase them. With DIASHINE, I can offer you a 10% discount if you contact Roland Bosner and just drop my name Kaliko in the email. He'll help fill your order. Unfortunately, I'm not able to help you save any money on any of the products from Diamond Pacific. Yet at the same time, I do all of my ordering directly through the manufacturer, and I recommend that you do that also, and that information will also be in the description down below the video. I hope this video was helpful and answered any questions you might have. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment down below, and me or any of my regular viewers will be happy to help you if we have the information that you might be asking about. Well, thank you for watching this video all the way to the end, and once again, I hope that in some way it helped you and will inspire you to carve your own fire agate. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all of that great support YouTube jazz. I love you for watching. I'll see you in the dirt soon.